Welcome back to our Neuroscience Digest powered by my BrainWise Coach podcast. I am one of your hosts for our episode today, Bastian. And of course, I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Phil Dixon. And we are so excited to bring you episode 3 of what we are calling the Neuroscience Digest, which, just a quick recap, is all around us taking, or really it's Phil going and doing our research because he is our research expert, and sharing with us in real time a summary of all of the new things that are being published from a neuroscience perspective. Or if we're able to find themes, then themes are presented. If not, we're just presenting really rich and interesting information. And of course, we're doing our best to connect all of it back to how we can continue to live our lives in a more BrainWise friendly way. And with that, Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you. What's happening in the world of neuroscience news this past week?
So it's been a quiet week, surprisingly enough. Typically, there's 4 or 5 that come out every day, but it's been a bit quieter. So we're actually going to cover there's sort of 4 overlapping topics. One is a piece of news that came out, and I'm just going to call it mental activity. Then we're going to talk about mice, believe it or not. And then I'm going to talk about fainting and some non-conscious behavior. So those are what we have on the docket today.
And as long as you're not going to recommend that I get a pet mouse, I'm okay with talking about mice.
Okay.
Outside of that, Mike and I are no friends.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you. So this actually did come across on the 5th of November. So that's Wednesday or Thursday last week. And I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll describe what it does. It says, mind captioning, evolving descriptive text of mental content from human brain activity. Now, it's like many scientific papers. You have to turn around when you read that and go, excuse me, what the heck is that all about? And I get that. And I need to bring it back up here again. And so I'm going to read a little bit more. I'm going to give you the abstract, and then I'm going to translate what it means. It says, a central challenge in neuroscience is decoding brain activity to uncover mental content comprising multiple components and their interactions, i.e., with all the technology we have to date, looking into our brains and deciding what's actually going on is actually fairly difficult. We can make some inferences, we use all sorts of different machinery, but this group seems to have discovered a way using AI and in fact, we present a method that generates descriptive text mirroring brain representations via semantic features computed by a deep language model. All right. Now, what does that mean? It means that they have discovered a way of looking at the images that are going on in your brain, deducing what it is you're thinking about, and translating it to text.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Did they report out to what degree of accuracy, or is that still in discovery?
I think it's probably still in discovery, but the very fact that we've got a group of people thinking that they can put a set of find out images that are going on in the brain by whatever techniques, and then translating that into, or deducing from that, what it is you're thinking about.
Amazing.
That is both an amazing, from the point of view of future treatment of brain disorders, it's an amazing breakthrough. But like everything else in technology, there's a slight sort of, oh my gosh, that's a little scary.
It is, because, it's been somewhat unreachable in terms of, you watch the superhero shows and one of them's always mind reading. This is to some degree a variation of that. So it's absolutely fascinating, while also being somewhat scary, because there's probably some, depending on how accurate it's going to be, the ethical considerations and how is it used.
Yeah, all sorts of things going on. But anyway, that was one of the things that came across this week. It's not something I think we can therefore say, here's how to decode your life. Right. But it was sufficiently fascinating that I thought it's just worth, and very recently that got. Mm-hmm. The other thing that came across was some work we've done on mice. And I'll tell you what it was. Facial expressions in mice. All right. I'm going to take a guess that you never knew that mice had facial expressions.
I'm not sure I really understand. I knew they have a head, but that they had a face in terms of how we're describing it related to human similarities. No.
It turns out they do. So this group was working on looking at mice facial expressions, and therefore when they applied certain stimuli to the mouse, can they interpret what's going on and therefore make some assumptions and linkages. But that in and of itself was fascinating. Hey, mice have facial expressions. All right. We all do as human beings. And the linkage there is that it turns out mice brains are actually really good representations for human brains. And so a lot of the research that we do about our brains in general start off with research into mice.
Interesting.
So that's why I wanted our listeners basically say, when we talk about mice in some of these discoveries, it's very relevant to us because there's actually a very accurate mapping from mice brains to human brains.
Interesting. We're not suggesting that some people have the IQ of a mouse. We're saying
some people do.
Depending on who you are, more about the physical structure, I'm assuming, and how it's operating. Perhaps is our comparison.
Yeah, I won't go down. I was going to crack a joke there, but I'll avoid the jokes in a serious conversation like this. But anyway, they show you how they are taking these things and looking at the mice and how they measure the electrostatic variables and all sorts of things in mice brains. Probably a lot more detail than we need to go into today. But the thing that came up for me today, actually, when I want to talk about is the non-conscious brain. So I went to have my COVID shot this morning, and I turned up at the doctor's at the right time, the right place, which is 2 in a row now. And, I have to say, as an aside, I know this is not our normal, but as an aside, I was meeting with my doctor over the weekend, and she had listened to one of our podcasts, the one where I had shown up at the wrong time. And she didn't realize that I'd actually been there at the wrong time. So we had a fascinating conversation about that. She said, you should have told me. I would have come and seen you. But anyway, so I had my COVID shot. Yeah. And one of the things they asked today, which they've never done before, is, do you faint if you get an injection? It turns out I do. And I've known it for a long, long while now. And it first happened to me probably 50 years ago. And I've never tested it since. If I don't look at being injected or the other person being injected, it's fine. It's not knowledge of it. It's actually the visual seeing of it. And I did faint on one occasion. So I started to wonder why. Why do people faint? And it turns out it's a fairly well-known event. And it says fainting in response to seeing an injection is typically caused by the vasovagal syncope. Wouldn't you like to know what that is?
Right.
It's a sudden drop in heart rate and blood pressure triggered by the autonomic nervous system. So it's exactly what we've been talking about in terms of how the brain responds to threats. So basically what happens is the sight of a needle, the anticipation of the pain, or the emotional stress associated with all that triggers off the amygdala, period. And so
interesting.
It is.
It's a very interesting response from a safety perspective, because fainting, that means you're not in control anymore.
And so basically what it is, the body, it's the fight-flight response. If we remember, there's multiple layers. There's a tend and befriend, fight or flight, the freeze, and then the last one is faint. 3 actions saying, we're in so much trouble here that let's reset and take us out of the game for a little while.
Wow.
It is the ultimate body's response to the fight and flight, that whole multi-layering system. Wow. So basically it says the brain briefly shuts down to reset the system, resulting in fainting. We've even, believe it or not, identified the neurotransmitters that are involved And there's multiple neurotransmitters. So it is actually the automatic response going on in the brain that says, no, we're going to close the show down, bring down the curtain, and reset the stage. We'll bring the actors back on the stage. We'll start again in 5 or 10 minutes. Go away.
Wow. Yeah. Just an intermission.
Yeah,
Into the
it's
program.
intermission. That was this morning, and that's what I was thinking about on the drive home from the doctors. And a couple of other things then occurred to me, and that is, and we can go through these one by one, but we've talked
Sure.
a little bit about the non-conscious brain.
Yeah.
I don't believe we covered what goes on when someone sees an injection.
No, this would be a first.
So I asked the nurse who gave me the injection, is this typical? And she said, it's not typical, but it's not unusual. And someone should say at that point, that's a Tom Jones song.
Yeah.
And she said, it's different. Some people just, the act of knowing they're going to get an injection will cause it. And for some people, it's the seeing of the injection. And they will have you lay down rather than sit down, if that is going to be the case. So the message to our listeners, our BrainWise listeners, are, it'd be interesting how many of you out there actually do have that same reaction. Could do it like a little mini survey.
Yeah, a little poll. I love it. So add in the comments, are you someone who has difficulty with injections, and do you faint or have you fainted in the past? And then, of course, if it doesn't seem to bother you, we'd be very interested to see what's the scope of it. Because me, I give myself an injection for weight loss right now. And so I don't have as much of an issue with it. I don't like it when they stick me and then they're moving it around because they can't find my vein. That feeling makes my skin crawl. But outside of that, I don't like the pain, but then I can move forward from it. But my husband, he struggles with having needles, and I'm not sure he faints, but I know that he doesn't like to look at it. So it'd be very interesting to see what's the swath of percentage of people who are in those categories.
Yeah. And she also went on to describe the fact that for some people, it's actually getting the injection. But for some people, it's actually the thought of giving blood, for example. It's the thought of actually losing the blood. That's the thing that actually triggers some people off as well. And typically what happens is, for me, I just faint. But for some people, they actually go through a process, which is, I feel faint. They don't actually faint, but they recognize the drop of blood pressure, lowering of the heart rate, actually makes them feel faint.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Very
interesting for me. But so let's keep going. So let's talk about some things that we may have talked about in the past. Non-conscious brain reactions. I think we talked about blushing.
Yes.
Right?
Make blush on camera.
That's right. We talked about goosebumps. I think some people call it chicken skin. And we know that's caused by cold, obviously. It's also caused by both excitement and fear. You can also get chicken skin on being apprehensive. Like, I have a colleague who we were looking at an old house. He wouldn't go inside the house because he said he was getting chicken skin and he knew there was something wrong with his house. Again, all go on unconscious. So let's talk about some others. Have you ever had hiccups?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they won't go away.
Why?
I know it's there's something going on in your esophagus area, but I don't know what the purpose is.
We don't know. Yeah. So what would hiccups, why would that be an evolutionary advantage to have hiccups?
I don't know. Maybe it's comedic humor, quite honestly, because some of them are hilarious. Mine are for sure, because they sound like the word hiccup, like literally word for word, syllable for syllable. Maybe it's comedy.
So it is comedy. By the way, there is one fairly renowned cure for them. And do you know what it is?
The old wives' tale is get scared and they'll go away, but that doesn't seem to work for me.
And if you know that's the process, your brain's going, no, you're not going to trigger me like that. The one that at least I've seen work 100% of the time is drinking out of the wrong side of the cup.
How do you do that?
Great question. I'm glad
I want to test it out, but how am I going to tip this over and drink out of it?
you have to stand up, and I'm not going to try and do it, but you have to stand up, bend your head over, and drink out of the wrong side of the cup. And if you do that, I get 99% guarantee that it will actually cure hiccups.
So if I bend over, my cup is still like this, but I'm just upside down drinking.
No, you've got to go drink out the other side.
But how are you going to do that? There's no hole.
Not in your cup, there isn't, but in regular cups, you don't have holes at the top.
What do you mean? What about my coffee mug?
There we go.
So I drink from the bottom?
Drink from so put it to your mouth as you would normally drink it. Right. Now, you've got to have to figure a way of drinking out the other side.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's not on the bottom. It's just the other side.
Yeah.
And you have to be bent over.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I've used it many times on people when we've got those hiccups that don't want to seem to go away. Now, some people feel embarrassed doing that in public. I actually got my sister to do it in a public restaurant in Las Vegas once.
We'll do so many other things in public. I'm not sure that this one's to be embarrassed about.
Anyway, so that's one.
Yeah.
So let's see what other. Have you ever cried?
All the time.
All the time. Is that a conscious choice?
Sometimes only when I know that I need to. I can feel the emotion building up. Then I will go watch a sad movie or something and try to cry.
Yeah. But for many people, it's a non-conscious response.
Right.
So we cry when we're sad.
Yeah. When we're happy.
When we're happy.
Mm-hmm. Overly emotional.
Why would we have a response that's the same for being happy and sad?
I don't know. My theory is that there's so much overwhelm of emotion that it's your way of releasing it to some degree.
Yeah. I actually asked a neuroscience scientist this question. I said, so what's going on in our brain? Do we have overlapping circuitry or what is it? And he thought for a moment. He went, God was a comedian.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think he definitely was a comedian. Because there's some things it just doesn't quite make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Anyway, so when we cry, facial expressions, little micro expressions, we know that when people smile, there's a whole bunch of things. How do you tell the difference between a genuine smile and a non-authentic smile? Can you tell?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We all can. How?
You're looking at other cues and there's probably an experience. If you're in person too, there's other things you're reading, but eyes probably are a big part of that. How your cheeks are. People think I fake smile a lot, but I'm actually really smiling. I just don't smile with my teeth.
Yeah. So a lot of people your eyes will crinkle. In fact, it's actually there was a guy called Monsieur Duchenne who spent his life looking at that stuff, and they are actually called Duchenne lines, those little crinkles around your eye.
Right here?
Yeah.
I thought those were crow feet.
They are, but that's when they're permanently there. But when you're smiling, there's lots of micro muscles. And one of those there's little triggers under your eyes. There's the genuine smile around your face. One of the reasons why when we get Botox, it's very difficult to actually interpret somebody's emotion because all of a sudden those muscles are no longer working.
They're frozen in place.
Yeah.
But I loved watching The Christmas with the Cranks when he goes to get Botox to Malin for their little excursion. They then try to have dinner and eat peaches. You know what happens? All the peaches fall out of his mouth.
And the last one I'll talk about is also to do with the eyes. And that is the pupils in your eye dilate when you're emotionally excited. And whether this next is apocryphal or true, there's a story about in the olden days in China, when there'd be the jade sellers. When somebody would be asking about a piece of jade, the seller would hold it in front, but wouldn't look at the jade, look at the person's eyes. Or a dilation in their eyes. They knew the person was excited about that piece of jade, and then there was no negotiation on the price.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a good tactic for salespeople.
It may well be. So there we have it. I was going to call this of mice and men, but what's going on in them being able to read our minds? That's one. The fact that we base a lot of what we interpret on mice, fainting, and other activities in the non-conscious brain.
Very interesting. Even though it was a quieter week, you said from a research perspective, it sounds like it was still equally as fascinating over the last weeks. I'm sure our BrainWise friends took something away from it as they were listening. If nothing else, we provided you, hopefully, a bit of comedic humor to go about your Thursday.
That's exactly right. And we do know that humor is really good for the brain.
100%. And with that is our Neuroscience Digest episode powered by my BrainWise coach. As always, stay tuned for our episode of the full podcast, My BrainWise Coach, next week. And if you enjoyed today's episode, like, comment, share, subscribe to whatever podcast channel you listen to, as it helps others find us, and we want to continue growing our BrainWise community. And we'll talk to you next week. And until then, always stay curious, stay compassionate, and always stay BrainWise.